Hi guys, this is Bill from Spencer1984.com with part 7 of building Revell's 69 charger. And it's actually going to be a few steps this time. We're going to do a little fast forwarding, but we're going to start with part 7, the exhaust assembly. Now we already did the exhaust pipes, so we're going to be focusing on the steering box and shaft and the little radiator hose. And for those, you're going to need two parts trees. This one with the steering components, and this one with the radiator hose. We're also going to be putting together the front suspension here, step 8, and got a few more parts for that. So you're going to need the same two parts trees to begin with. This one has the K-member and the steering spindles. This one has the front shock absorbers. And you are also going to need this parts tree here that has the sway bar and the tie rod on it. And then the last thing that we're going to be doing in this video is going to be the rear suspension assembly. And for that, we're going to need this parts tree with the drive shaft on it. We're going to need this parts tree that has the rear axle and the rear springs on it. And officially, you're also going to need this parts tree with the rear shock absorbers on it, but I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I'm going to get these all cut off the trees and cleaned up. I'll be right back. All right, here is everything we need for step 7, step 8, and step 9. I am going to be changing this up a little bit. I'm going to be using the lift block and the longer shock absorbers out of the 68 charger kit. For comparison, this is how they look compared to the ones that come in the straight 69 kit. You see just a little bit longer, not a huge difference, but it will give me the lift that I need to recreate this specific car. Now, in a previous video, the comment was made about how the 68 and 69 share a bunch of parts. So here's the 68 that I actually finished last year. And take a look under the hood. You can see that it's got the Hemi engine with the 2 4s on it. But really, most of the components between that and the one that I'm working on right now are identical. In fact, the engines up to the heads are the exact same parts between kits. The suspensions are identical between the kits, chassis, so you can do a lot of part swapping between them to come up with some interesting combinations. So just something to keep in mind. But for right now, I'm going to get the parts painted and prepared, and we're going to be doing some assembly work. All right, here is everything painted up. Got some prep work done on it, and these are ready for their final assemblies. First thing I want to do though is show off step 7, putting the steering box and radiator hose in. Here's the steering box, and unfortunately there's not really a slick way of showing how to get it in there. If we take a closer look here, you can see the shaft right there, and that goes in right next to the exhaust manifold into that hole in the firewall right there. So it's kind of a tricky thing to get in, but that's how you want it to look in the end. The radiator hose goes into the water pump there and the hole in the radiator right there. So at least that part is pretty straightforward. Just drapes right across the top of the oil filter. So little prep work that we had to do on the chassis here. I had to clear off these 4 spots right here for the K-member. And on the K-member, I've got these 4 spots cleaned off to match. And the front shock absorbers are already glued on. You want them about that angle right there. I also have the front spindles prepped, and for that, really all you need to do is make sure that that is totally scraped clean of paint, because you don't want to be messing with that once it's assembled on the car. So let's go ahead and get this front end fully assembled. We're going to start with the K member, and to get that installed, what you want to do is you want to line it up so that the first shock absorber goes into that little hole between the upper A-arm and the frame. Get that pressed in, and then just drop it in. And you can see the shocks each have their own little pocket on the inner fender that they fit in. And then we're going to take a little bit of glue, and we're going to apply it to those spots that we cleared off on the frame and the K member. A little dot in there. And then we do the same thing on the other side. And just a little bit of glue right there in that cleared off spot. And once that's set, we will take our steering spindle, stick it in the lower control arm, and then locate it to the upper control arm. Repeat that same thing for the other side. Get it located, just like that. So that's how you want all that to line up. And then just squeeze everything together to make sure that it's seated and the glue takes hold. See, this side just needs to be popped in just like that. And once it's all together, the steering actually will work on this kit. So it's a nice little touch. So now we just need to leave it alone for a couple hours and make sure that the glue sits, and then we can put the rest of it together. Alright, that's had plenty of time to set up, so now it's time to install the sway bar. And what we do for that is pretty straightforward. You just take one end, feed it underneath this middle brace right here, get it all the way through, and just kind of leave it there for the moment. What we're going to do is we're going to put a dot of glue here and here. So again, I'm taking a dot of super glue and I'm just putting a little tiny bit on each one of these control arms. And we take the sway bar itself, bring it up so that it sits on top of those, and on top of these two little flat spots on the cross member. So that's how you want that to look. And the last thing is the tie rod. And that just snaps right over the ends of the spindles right here. You bring it across. Make sure that it's all the way snapped in. There you go. And snap the other side in. And there you go. Front end is now all complete, and we've got some working steering going on. Now it's time to get the back end done. The last thing we're going to work on tonight is going to be the rear suspension, and that required a little extra prep work as well. First thing we're going to take a look at is the spring, and you can see I've got my lift block on it that I showed earlier, and there's a correction that needs to be made on this kit. That right there is the original hole that the axle is supposed to fit in, but this is where it's supposed to go so that the wheel is centered in the opening. Uh, if you do this, make sure you shorten the drive shaft as well. It's not an absolutely critical process, but it does make the car look better. So to get these installed, I'm going to take a little bit of cement. Uh, it should be something flexible. That's why I'm using the liquid cement here. And you put a generous amount right there on the hole. You do the same with the other spring here. And then you take your axle and you install the springs right into the holes. Now, if you use the stock ones, it's not going to be a problem. It's not like anything is going to hit, but it does look a little bit better with the axle moved forward that 1/16 of an inch or so. So you want to get this all pinched together, and then you want to set it. We want to make sure that everything is going to line up correctly when we go for the final assembly. So that's why we are allowing for a little bit of flex right here and right now, because it needs to fit first on the axle, but then in these holes right here at either end. So that's why we're doing it this way. We're just making sure that everything is lined up exactly where it needs to be. So I gotta let this dry now. Then I can come back, pull it out, put glue at the four corners there, and get the drive shaft installed. So let this set, and we'll be right back. This has had a chance to set up now, so we're going to remove it very carefully here. Make sure that we don't screw up that alignment that we've worked so hard to get. And now we take our drive shaft and you feed that in, line it up with the end of the transmission shaft. And we're going to take a little bit of glue, again using some liquid cement here, and put that at all four corners of our springs. And line it up just behind the holes because we want to give room to line up the drive shaft. Pick that up, line that up with the differential, push the axle forward, and then pinch down on all four corners to make sure that everything is seated. And since we did our alignment, we get a little bit of wiggling here and there, but that's what you want it to look like. You want the springs to be nice and tight at all four corners. So this is how the back end of the spring should look like, right tight to the shackles. The front should be tight to the chassis. You can see how this side is popped up a little bit. So just go around, make sure that all of those are in the holes just like that. So now we're going to do the final step, the shock absorbers. Now for the final task, we're going to be installing the shock absorbers here. And to get them in, the tops are going to go into these two pockets right here on either end of this cross member. And the top plate is going to go on top of the spring. So you just line that up in the pocket, just like that. And then with a little bit of glue on the top side of the plate, you press that down. Hold that. And do the same on the other side. Take that into the pocket, onto the top of the leaf spring. Make sure it's seated. And there you go. That's it. The chassis is now complete. Our next task is going to be to put the wheels on it. So check back then, and thanks for watching.